Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here, the host of the System Simplified podcast, where I feature top founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And today's episode is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group, where we create, document, optimize, and implement processes and procedures so businesses can grow and thrive. And today's guest is Bruno Gavino. Hi, Bruno.
Hi.
It's great to have you on the podcast. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited about this.
Yeah, we're going to have a great conversation because we're going to have a conversation about marketing, but also technology and AI and how it all intersects, and obviously systems, because we always talk about systems here. But first of all, let me read your bio. So you are the founder and CEO of CodeDesign, a global digital marketing agency that recently launched LLM Search Console. This tool was built to transition all businesses from traditional SEO, search engine optimization, into generative engine optimization, known as GEO, ensuring brands remain visible and cited within AI-driven search models like ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini. Wow. Okay. I mean, this is a hot topic for sure. So, Bruno, let's just dive into that. Tell us, what is GEO?
So yeah, GEO, that's a good way to start. It's a generative engine optimization. So for a while, we were all putting all our efforts into optimizing for search engine optimization, which would be like the way that Google would find our website and would rank it on the search page. Nowadays, we've all noticed that we don't search like that anymore. We go into ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, and we engage into a conversation. The way
even
that
in Google, it's Gemini, really, because when you go into a search in Google, the first thing that will happen, it will be a search on Gemini. So Google is actually teaching us, do not do the search the old way, because you're not going to get it. It's going to be Gemini first. But it does rank the other websites below that.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly it. Like it's getting completely immersed in the way that we search. And so it's changing dramatically the way that brands are showing up for these LLMs, and so means that we all need to rethink the way that we are putting our content online, and the way we are rethinking the way our brands are. So yeah, that's the things we've been focusing on a lot. Over, I would say, for the past year and a half, we've been focusing a lot on that.
So what's the difference? Like what are the tips and tricks of getting noticeable on the LLM search?
Well, it is radically different from the way that nowadays all these engines have a much deeper comprehension of what is our digital footprint online. It's no longer just the content that we provide. It's no longer the backlinks that we have. It's much more than that. It's the context of everything we do. It's our entire digital footprint. It's the way that we're mentioned. It's the way that clients review us. It's the way that we show up on social media, that we engage in conversations, how popular we are in that particular niche. So the way it means, like, it's no longer possible to have a good result just by creating blog posts and expecting them to index. Nowadays, we need to think globally as a brand. We need to make sure that everything we come up with has a digital footprint, and that these LLMs can find them.
Okay, so let's go with that. That's a very good point. Let's go over. I'll ask you questions about my business, for instance. Okay, so I have a website. I do a lot of article writing. So I have a blog. Then we post on LinkedIn. I write for Forbes and Inc.com and other articles. And I go on a lot of interviews. I do interviews myself. So if I come to you and I say, Bruno, help me out. I want to be visible on ChatGPT or Claude, what would you tell me? Like, what should I do?
I mean, you are probably very well prepared to compare to a lot of brands, but that's what brands need to start doing is they need to do like all those things you mentioned need to happen. So they need to have like the content needs to be relevant, the content needs to be unique, needs to serve a purpose, and at the same time needs to be distributed in the right channels and needs to go on social media, needs to generate engagement, but also your personal authority of everything that it's being written needs to be highlighted. So it's no longer just a content strategy; it's also a technical strategy. So
So
we
highlighted
need
where?
it needs to be, for example, like you need to make sure that you have the formats that LLMs are looking at to be found. For example, like all of these systems, they take a lot of energy. They like take a lot of data. So which means like it's very expensive for them to crawl and to have this information up to date. So which means we need to make their life easier. We need to make sure that when we build the websites, when we build landing pages, when we build content and articles, that we, for example, in the past we used to, a good example, in the past we used to like have an article, put it on a PR company, they would get a bunch of backlinks. Now this has changed. Not that this has changed completely, but it now has a new layer, which is these models are able to understand if certain words are mentioned during like our conversation. This conversation that we're having is going to be even the words, the keywords, the expressions, the references, they're all going to be mapped out and they're going to be considered for this new wave of search. So we need to be much more mindful of what is the ecosystem of the brand, what is the ecosystem of everything we're doing in every single moment of the journey. So if your go-to market is just writing articles for your blog, definitely you need to reshape
So
everything.
give the listeners some actual piece of advice that they can do. So what should they do with their website? Should they create a separate landing page where it has all the information? I mean, how do we make it visible?
Yeah, we need to make sure that we have all. I'm not going to be like too technical here, but like they need to. There are certain formats that the LLMs prefer to others. Okay, so that's one of the things. For example, like LLMs take a lot of energy crawling through PDFs. A lot of websites have a lot of PDFs. Like for example, that's a very simple example of something that can be changed very quickly and that has a lot of impact. So what happens is if it goes through a long time of crawl and it doesn't come up with a good result, they'll move on to the next website. So which means like if you have one of those, and for a while we've developed a lot of PDFs because we needed like white papers and people needed to download our content. Nowadays, LLMs don't love this kind of content. For example, something else that we can do is we could have like a simplified version of the website, lighter, less images, much more structured to be read by these LLMs. Like for example, they love question and answers. They love that resumes of the conversations, resumes of the articles, things that can give them pointers to be more efficient. So all of that is like one of the few things that we can do immediately to like improve our results.
That's great. Now, you said that the content has to be unique and relevant. So how do you make sure that the content is relevant?
Oh, it's pretty tough, right? Nowadays, it's there's almost anything we haven't written that hasn't already been is not already online. But if you think about it, like what makes our businesses relevant are our experience, for example, with clients. That's like something that other companies, okay, they might have something similar in a similar vertical, but they don't have that particular experience. They don't have that particular connection with that client. They didn't face that particular challenge, which means like it is ours will always be unique in that way. So I think like investing in case studies, investing in interviewing the client about that case study, all of that are perceived by LLMs as a sources of reliability and sources of truth.
Now, when you are interviewing the client, like for instance, we interview many of our clients, but it's on YouTube. So do you suggest also writing the transcript so the LLM can actually figure it out?
Writing transcript and at the bottom, for example, like going for question and answering that article can answer to. It's like I feel like it's a lot like you're trying to explain to a 6-year-old a problem. Like you need to make it like simpler so it takes a lot less energy to understand it and much more important than just exactly what kind of what kind of wording you have in the article itself. How does it connect to other things you've done? How does it connect to an interview you've been, or how does it connect to a case study you had, like to your past experience? It's much more, interestingly, it is much more of a merge between a human and a automated like solution.
Right. So, you have a marketing agency and that's what you specialize in. So obviously you pivot and you are addressing that particular problem, or not problem, but that particular reality of now we have the LLMs, and those are the search engines. So those are the generative engines that we need to optimize. How do you feel AI is going to impact your own business?
Oh, AI, it's already impacting a lot of our business. It is, AI, the way as the generative that we're just mentioning, is impacting impacting every brand. So there's not one single day that we don't go around this and try to discuss the best way, the best strategy. So in itself, it's something new. Also changed a lot the fact that we've been optimizing a lot of content. For example, a lot of companies have informational contents. They say, oh, we need to teach our customer and our potential clients on what we do. And all of this consideration phase of the funnel is moving into LLMs. So that also changes the opportunities and the moments that the brands have to impact people, and the moments that brands have to be relevant in that specific context. Like if for the first time ever, Meta had more revenue coming from ads than Google, because brands are realizing now that they need to invest in the awareness phase of the funnel, and the consideration is moving into other platforms. It's like it makes our job completely different. Internally also, and that's one of the reasons why we've developed the LLM Search Console, is we're looking into black boxes. You're like all of these companies like Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini. We're like trying always. It's like a cat and mouse situation where you're building things, see what works, trying to track it. It was so difficult to track. There are no tools to track it. And so we decided to get our hands dirty.
And there's no knowledge, honestly. I mean, that's what I was going to ask you. Like, how do you come up with it? Because it's not general knowledge. It's a trial and error, and it's continually evolving and changing.
Oh, it is. We have a huge list of things that didn't work. And I think that's the only way we could try to push this is how can we look into this again, black box, and try to break it down into pieces and into actionable items then we can actually apply to our clients and to ourselves in a way that we can be more relevant for this very new context. And I agree, the platforms are changing every single day. It's mind blowing how fast they're all changing, which means for us, it's also very important, to keep, we have a solution. We're looking into some, a Claude version, and then suddenly the next day we have something new. Makes our team always have to be looking into something new and what's changing, incorporating into it. It's very challenging and very satisfying. Again, we have a huge list of things that we haven't seen work, but we want to really push and keep doing. And others that we know that are consolidated and they're working, and those we're betting on for optimization. So it is challenging, but rewarding.
It really is. And listening to you, it's really the answer of, well, I can go right now on Claude and have a conversation with Claude of how I'm going to create the GEO for my company. But honestly, the reason why it's not going to work is because it will take hours for me to figure it out. I don't have the expertise or the experience. And what you're doing is you're constantly on top of it. You're constantly trying. And what your clients have the benefit of is the mutual experience of all of your clients, because you're trying it with different industries and different companies. And that's what you do. That's what you spend time on. So your expertise, you say, yeah, I can ask Claude, but it's not, because it's not just what Claude is saying. It's your data, your information analyzed, and see what works and what doesn't work. And that is the real benefit, because I think that the world of consulting, the world of advising is changing, but it doesn't mean that Claude is going to replace all advisors. And I had that conversation with many of my colleagues and in this area of being a trusted advisor. What you are gaining is the expertise, the trial and error, the knowledge, the best practices that are being acquired by basically using the tools and figure out what is the best tool for you.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. AI gives us an augmented capacity that based on our own experience to do things in a way that is definitely more efficient in certain angles. But I feel like once I tried to renew my kitchen and it was a nightmare and I thought I could do it by myself. I was like, oh no, I can do this. I can go on YouTube and like I see a lot of videos. And then like it took me months. It was crazy. And then, for certain things I did them and it looks good and looks exactly how I wanted. But in a lot of other things, I needed help. I needed help with plumbing. I needed help with infrastructure. I needed help with a lot of other things that I ended up not doing by myself. And I feel like consultancy is changing in that way. I have the opportunity to dedicate more time understanding the client's need. And I think that's changing as well. These solutions, these AI solutions also gives us the ability to understand from a broader perspective what are the client's needs, because ultimately we're not on that business. We're helping, but we're not on that business, and helps us bridge faster and to get into projects faster, but also to increase exponentially our knowledge base to be able to tackle much more complex issues that before we weren't able to do. I feel like consultancy companies are merging way more than they were before with a lot of different clients, because now we are aligning. We have our goals much more aligned than probably we would ever had in the past.
That's true. It does have you like streamline things. And that's also where, we are expert at processes and process documentation. And at the beginning, we'll go, okay, well, we're going with this AI. Can AI do it instead of us? But the truth is that in order for you to actually implement AI, you got to have workflows more than ever. You got to really define your processes, because otherwise, what are you going to optimize? So it opened a whole different opportunity of, let's systematize the workflows. Let's define your workflows and your processes. So then you can figure out what needs to be optimized. So in some ways, it's kind of like you gave the example of the metaphor of renovating your kitchen. Well, it is kind of like if you wanted to start renovating your kitchen, but everything was a mess, the pots and pans are everywhere, and you have like all the things on top of the counters, and you won't be able to even start a project. And if you didn't have the blueprint, you wouldn't be able to do the project either. So it really forces you to put everything into place and look at things and then put it and automate it. Because I think the difference is also, Bruno, what do you think about this? Is in the past, we could hire people, even if our company was not optimized or not in order, because human nature, you'll plug in there and you'll do something and then you'll figure it out, or you ask the questions, or it won't be that successful, but it won't break. But if you actually take a robot and you put it into a non-existent process, nothing will happen. They're not going to or they're going to figure it out and hallucinate and create something else. That's really what's going to happen. That's the analogy of, you got to have everything in place and in order to actually utilize the tools in order to move faster.
100%. I feel like even worse than having one guy trying to renovate the kitchen is having 5 guys trying to renovate the same kitchen.
That's right.
And I feel like that's one of the biggest issues.
You can have a party, call all your friends. Hey, I'm not really good at that. Let's figure it out. And each one of you has a whole idea.
Yeah, exactly. And the companies are going through this. Like you see this, like before going into the workflow, before understanding what do they need to automate, or what do they need to incorporate AI? What's that digital transformation? What's that blueprint? You have people using different models, people using different data, people using, different ways by themselves to optimize their own work. But sometimes optimizing your work does not benefit the company as a whole. And I feel like that's one of the things that companies sometimes we all maybe do a little bit have a hard time seeing, is because we feel like there's definitely this fear of replacement. And I feel we find this every day, right? So I feel like the fear it's bigger, the more disorganized a company is.
Because you don't know. If you know what is it that you are doing and how to do that, then you can grab onto that and understand what exactly was going to be replaced and how. It is the horse and carriage you had the little streets that now, if you took a really fast car or a good car or any car, they won't be able to drive on those streets. You won't be able to get to work because it would not have room for the traffic. So we had to build all that infrastructure. And the freeways, those freeways that we have, that didn't exist when we had a horse and carriage. And that's the same analogy of, in the past, we were horse and carriage. Okay, good. We have those roads and you can tie your horse and hopefully there is water there for it. And then it's just like all these things. Now we needed a whole new infrastructure, but it doesn't mean that you're going to get your fast cars on the same infrastructure. It's just not going to happen.
It's just not going to happen. And in your case, like, because looking into the processes itself, I feel like there's opportunity for companies even to look into their processes, create structure, and then realize, well, wait a minute, maybe here there's a new source of revenue that I've never thought about, because I never really understood that this is just an outlier process that can become a new business. For example, like and taking you a little bit back to what LLM Search Console now became a project itself, which is independent from CodeDesign, has its own life. And that exists just because this new problem arises from the structure and not the other way around. We were not trying to fix it there. So I feel like if you're trying to go into AI, if you're trying to embrace digital transformation and you don't work with the processes team, I feel like you're not going to go very far.
That's true. That's very true. You need both. Well, Bruno, if people want to get a hold of you and want to know what you do and get your help, ask you a question, what's the best way to do that?
Well, I would love if people went on LLM Search Console, and I invite all of your listeners to be a founding member, which will give them automatically free credit. And I'm always available. You can reach out on LinkedIn, Bruno Gavino. I'm sure I'm the only one. And I think that's the best way.
That's fantastic. All right, Bruno. Well, it was great having you on this podcast. What a great conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.